So I am a very fast talker, but we're gonna get right into it so that way we stay on time. So this is my credibility. Why are you here listening to me today? It's because I do roughly about 20 annual events. And most of those events, like I said, celebrate diversity and culture, but a lot of them also focus on youth programming. Just since due to COVID, I have transitioned to learning how to do virtual and hybrid programming as well as in-person. So today we will focus on a little bit of all of that mix, how to do both virtual and in-person programming, as well as kind of that hybrid mix. But like I said, I do roughly about 20 annual programs. Some of those include collaborations. Some are just completely out of the Safe and Civil City program, and some are also from my commissions, the Commission on Status of Black Males, as well as the Commission on Status of Children and Youth. All right, so we have some goals. We always want to focus on what we're going to do today. Our first goal, purpose focus, is equip you with practical steps for programming for a youth audience. Goal number 2, the tools for the job. I will provide you all with the online toolkit full of the resources for practical planning. So a lot of things that I talk about today, you will have access to those. Those are either free or very affordable resources that are online and available to you. We will also talk about, like I said, some techniques while developing programs to focus on youth. I could talk on the subject for weeks, but this is going to be our very thin, focused, narrow zone right here. And we're also going to idea share. All of you are here because you have some type of connection to youth. You all have great ideas. We want to hear those as well. Okay. All right. So starting right off, problem versus solution. Why is it that we need youth programs? This is an actual question to you. So feel free to drop that information into the chat. I will say if we were in person, I would actually have some type of candy or giveaways to give you to encourage you to speak. But I want you all just to kind of either come off of mute really quickly and just pop up and say things, or you can drop them in the chat. To help youth build networks, yes. Community connections. To give the youth a voice in the community, to learn from youth, absolutely. These are all great, all true. Building youth skills, yes. You all are hitting on extremely important points of why we need youth programming and why it's important to do good youth programming, because this information is definitely a platform for us to continue to build our community and strengthen our network and our ties. Awesome. Yeah, definitely keep dropping things in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. So let's talk about our planning pieces. This is a disclaimer before I start to talk about these pieces. Soup can have many ingredients, but the goal is to always eat. So think about my planning pieces this way when you apply them for yourself. Some ingredients you may need and some you may not need. So again, this is just some tools and some information, but you are more than welcome to use these how you see fit for the youth programming that you're trying to achieve. Intentionally, I call these pieces and not steps. Steps imply an order. Depending on what you need, you can start at one place. So if you receive a grant, you may start at the promotion and the relationship building. But if you receive a location first, you may start at the fundamentals and the logistics. So we're going to talk about all 4 of these pieces and how they connect with each other when we're talking about programming. So let's start at idea cultivation. All right. The what and the why of your youth program. So we have, how do you come up with your ideas? It's always best to have a why of why you're doing a youth program, okay? And there's many ways to come up with those ideas. First option is a focus group. So this is a group that could be an advisory committee, it could be parents, it could be youth themselves, it could be teachers, it could be you and a coworker. Basically, people getting together and coming up with a reason why to put on a youth program. You can also do a community response as your why. So drunk driving, for instance, say we had a uptake in youth drunk driving, you may put on a youth program to focus on drunk driving, maybe they use e-cigarettes and other things that come up in the community, or right at your school. Audience response. This is one of my favorites. So let's say you are down the line annually in your youth program or any program, and you do some type of feedback survey. You're going to use the information from that survey to inform your program for the next year. And then filling the gap. This is what I like to call it, what's the missing point? An example of this is that the Commission on the Status of Black Males does a program called Winter Wonderland, which is a holiday program where we saw that there was not a Santa Claus of color in the community for kids to go take photos with. So we developed a program where we supplied a Santa Claus of color and a photographer, and we filled the gap in the program that there wasn't a person that kids of color or anyone could have that option to go take photos with during the holidays. So these methods can be combined and stem from, like I said, other existing programs. So say you have a youth program currently that needs a little bit of help. So you might take an existing program and take it to a focus group to say, hey, we have this great program, but we feel like there's something missing. How can we better it? Same thing, community response. Our world changes consistently. Sometimes programs are for a one-time only thing, and that's okay. But just know it's okay to make up a reason, but best practices is that it should relate to a need. This is how you're going to really garner and gain your audience. All right, setting the goals. Whew. I see everybody's faces on here like, yay, goals. So does your who align with your what, and are you getting your why? So again, why are you putting on this program? Who are you putting it on for? So your target audience, who is it for and how is that decided? I do what's called a Young Women's Leadership Summit. Within the title, you can probably gather that it's probably for young women, but we want to make sure that we're very clear in our language when we're talking about who it is that we want to attend. So yes, the summit is for young women, but anyone can attend. The message, so my what and my why, to provide a space for women of color to have brave conversations, are still intact, but my who can be anyone. So understand that there are some differences, but you want to also make sure that you are reaching your goals. So I could have 40 kids and only 10 of them be young women of color, and the rest could be made up of different cultural backgrounds and gender. Did I still reach my target audience? Technically, yes. But we also have other folks in the audience that we still need to count in some type of logistical form. But going back to my goals, I can say, yes, we reached X amount of 10 women of color. We had X amount of audience participation. Your what? What are you going to do to achieve that goal? Are you going to have speakers? Is it going to be hands-on? Are you going to do a scared straight method? And you all can kind of give me nods if you understand what the scared straight method is. Does everyone know what the scared straight method is? I'll give you a hint. There used to be a show where they would send children to prisons if they had bad behavior problems. I would not recommend that as an option for youth programming if you're going to be doing a positive youth program, but that is an option because that technically is a youth program. So again, thinking about what your what is. If your what is to teach kids how to ride a bike, you probably are not going to start off in a classroom doing a presentation on this is the parts of a bicycle. You might skip all the way to the hands-on part where they actually get to touch the parts of the bicycle and start moving in that manner. And then your why again. Are you meeting the goals? Are you solving the puzzle? So going back to what your ultimate goal is. So again, if our ultimate goal is to ride that bike, at the end of the program, did we at least get kids on the bike? Did we at least go a little, like a block or two? Did we meet our goals? Did we solve our puzzle? All right, moving on to fundamentals. All right, the upfront information. This is some of the most basic and easiest parts of program planning. This is the things that I love. If you can't tell, I get really excited about programming. So your date, your time, your format, and your people. These are the basic fundamentals that you need in order to program. Especially when you're programming for youth, dates are extremely important. Anyone want to take a guess why?
Because they're incredibly busy.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Getting people to attend, getting people in the seats.
Getting people in the seats, they're incredibly busy. Yes.
You have to work around the school activities like the basketball games and the homecoming dances and
That's right. So think about, I'm kind of glancing here, but think about when you were 12, 13, 14. What were some of the activities that you did? You probably had an after school job, maybe you probably had siblings that you had to take care of, you had after school programming, you had some homework, and you had some me time built in. Well, let's fast forward all the way to 2022. Kids are extremely busy now. They're doing TikToks, they're doing Snapchat, they're doing all these other things. They don't have time to come to your weekend program or your after school program. They want to hang out with their friends. So you have to be very conscious about the date. And you do have to work with a little bit of collaboration with this. You have to work with the parents because transportation, what their time frame is, especially if you're working with a youth that is not of driving age. You have to work with holidays. You have to work with, we live in a college town. So all of the IU games, all of the little fives, all of these things. And Bloomington is a thriving community. There's always something going on. So how do you find the right date? This is my cheat code. I print IU calendar, I print the city calendar, I print the MCCSC calendar, I print any calendar I could think of. And I layer all those dates on top and I try to find some golden times. It doesn't always work out, but we do our best. But it's also just very easy to go ask the schools, hey, we would love to do a program with you all. What is the best date for you? Same thing for time. Conflicts always happen, breaks, fall breaks, and you have to do a little forward thinking about that to say, if I'm going to do a program the Friday before fall break, I'm probably not going to see anyone. Their parents been made the Disney plans, they're gone. So just kind of being very considerate and intentional about what days and times that you pick. Format, also extremely important, especially since COVID. Is this going to be a hybrid, in person or virtual? Is it going to be pre-recorded? Is it going to be outside, inside? Accessibility. Also, the other thing on here, or the only other thing I did not put on here, equitable. If we're going to be doing a hybrid program and you're going to know how you're going to have some students in person and some on electronic devices, is that very equitable for the program that you're putting on? Especially if you're focusing on low income students is your target audience. Is it fair to say that you're going to have working internet, a device, going to be able to speak, raise your hand, ask questions? So just again, some of those considerations. What is the best format for your target audience and the goal that you're trying to achieve? People, you always need people. How many of us love working in groups here? Okay. We're all in the same accord. It's not always the best, but you do need people. I mentioned earlier, schools are very important. You're obviously going to need to go through permission. You're going to need their parents. You're going to need sponsors because we need money to put on these programs. And that's a lot of work within itself. So you always want to give your time to make sure you have these conversations and map out the people that you're going to need in this process. Okay, we're going to bring this all together. Connecting the logistics. So base fundamentals inform your logistics. I'm going to say that again. Base fundamentals inform your logistics. So I know I'm going to put on a program. I'm going to need some basic needs like a location. I'm going to need a speaker. I'm going to need virtual hosting. So I need to be able to say what those needs are. Is there space available? So I'm going to have to do the work to go find a space that's big enough, that's accessible, that's going to have a ramp, that's going to have some restrooms near, it's going to have parking. I'm going to need to have us find a speaker. If I do this in a hybrid fashion or a virtual fashion, my speaker can be anywhere. But if I'm going to do this in person, I'm going to have to find someone local or someone willing to travel. And that's going to cost funds. So I'm going to have to go back to my people and say, okay, where's my sponsorships? Where is my support in order to getting this? Virtual hosting. Virtual hosting opens me up to a larger capacity. I'm sure with this Zoom license, we probably can have up to 500 people on here. If I tried to host this same thing right here in my office, probably 5 people. So again, understanding your program logistics and your needs. So I know that I need a large space. I know that I'm going to need a speaker. I know I'm going to need a location. Well, those are also going to be based on my base fundamentals. So that previous slide where we talk about date and time. Well, let's say I want the convention center. I need it on a Thursday. I need it at 3 o'clock. Well, the convention center is booked up every Thursday for 3 o'clock for the next 3 months. That's not going to work. Based on my date and time logistics, that space that I need is not going to work. So something has to change, either my location or my date and time. But like I said, either way, all those pieces are connected. There are other logistics examples, which there are a ton, and you all can drop some in the chat if you see one that's not listed here, but organizing bands and music and transportation and volunteers, making sure you have pens and pencils for when you do those surveys, make sure you have a bottle of water for your speakers if they're going to be up there talking for a long time. Very small nuances, but also extremely important in making sure that you have a successful program from start to finish. Okay, I said a lot really fast. What are your questions? I know you're all just burning up with questions and you're just nervous and you really want to talk to me. So let's just pretend it's just you and I.
Like, I have a question.
Yeah.
Like you said that being able to use the internet would be, that could raise a question of equity.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I'm immunocompromised. So a lot of the things that I do have to be virtually. And so for me, like for school things, for example, that would be like section 504, because things have to be in the least restrictive environment. So does that help balance out the equity, or what, like for in that situation, what would you do?
So that is a perfect example of making your program equitable, is again, going back to your people. So because let's say you are the facilitator and you can't go, you have to do a virtual setting. You would communicate that with, let's say, the schools or the parents or whomever to say, we're going to do a completely virtual format. What are your needs? Because you're already clear on what your needs are. And you're setting your program to be virtual. So you have to go out then and say, what are your needs and who are my target audience and how am I going to support them? So for example, the Young Women's Leadership Summit and the Black Male Summit, this was a program that we used to do in person. Obviously COVID hit and we had to take the program virtual. So that meant we were going to have to get rid of a lot of the things that we love to do in person, but we had to make it still just as engaging virtually. So we went to the schools. We said, hey, how can we work this program out? The schools then agreed to bring all their students together in classrooms. They made sure that they had masks on, they had pen and paper for us, and they put us on the big screen. So that way students can still see us and hear us and talk to us, engage with us. And we were still able to give them the program. So we still met our goal of meeting with the youth, getting our target demographic, but we did have to change up our format. So going to that virtual base and then looking at all of our needs in that factor.
So then I could do things in a hybrid situation. So because people in my group, they're not immunocompromised.
Yes.
And so then I would still be able to participate in that way with the group that way.
Yeah. I encourage you all to always ask questions. And that's a great question. Is this group capable of doing hybrid? Is this something that's capable of being completely virtual? What is our rain plan? And rain plan doesn't necessarily have to mean weather. It can be, gonna knock on wood here, our power grid goes out. There is no more technology. How are we gonna communicate? What's gonna happen? Granted, that's never happened. And if it did, enjoy your day off. But you always want, like I said, over plan, because that way you're always planning for the what ifs. Okay, any other questions?
I have one.
Yes.
I'm wondering about marketing. How do you reach this audience? Where do you market? How do you advertise?
That's part of our presentation. So I'm going to hold on to that question for a little bit longer, just so that way I can give you the visuals along with information. But that's a great question. Are there any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you all for participating. All right, Organizing and packaging. The plan translated into action. This is where a lot of the group work and effort gets lost, because myself as a planner, I am trained in this. I've done this enough that I can look at something and I can figure it out in my head, but no one else around me knows what that is. That means you have to put your plan down. So create a checklist, a task keeper, a timeline, however you do that within your organization. I know some folks use Slack, some people like to use Word documents, some like to just keep email chains. However you do it, just make sure that it is written down, because you always want to go back to the reference. I am a strong advocate of not verbally just saying things and then going to do it. We have minutes for reasons, we have agendas for a reason. It's so that way we can always go back to the source, because a translation can, so important, so important. So use adjectives and format using familiar techniques. What this means is I can tell you all here, I need bowls. You can go out to the store, you can go get some bowls, you can bring them back. And I'm like, oh, these aren't the bowls I needed. What I really need is 10 red plastic bowls under $20. You see how different that is? Because if I just send you out with this very bland, hey, this is what I need, instead of telling you exactly how I need it and when I need it and what I need, it can make a very big difference in your program. So being very clear in your translation with your plans is super important, especially when you're working with multiple people. And when I say multiple people, that can sometimes be the youth as well, not just adults. And we all know when you're speaking to youth, you want to be very clear in what you're saying, so that way they can understand and they can repeat it back to you. That's always a good rule of thumb. If you are unsure that someone doesn't understand you, just ask them, hey, could you just repeat back to me real quick what it is that we need? And you can have your checklist to make sure like, oh, yep, okay, we're good. We're both on the same solid accord. And then the actual program itself. So execution using your written and agreed upon plan. I'll say that again. Execution using your written and your agreed upon plan. How many of you have ever shown up to an event, you knew exactly what was supposed to happen, and then something random happens that was not agreed upon? And you're just looking like, what's happening? Who is this person? Why are they doing this? Why are they going off script? Why are they, there's so many whys. It's always best to keep to the plan. Now, this does not mean that if something happens, you shouldn't pivot, because incidents do happen. But again, like I said earlier, over plan for the worst, also celebrate the small wins. Okay, so again, sticking to the plan, prepare for the worst, but celebrate the small wins all along the way. Whatever you determine your small win is, that could be, hey, we're supposed to meet at 7 o'clock. Everybody's there at 7. That's great. We did it. We met at 7. It could be, we got an audience of at least one kid. There literally could be just one kid. It could be 12 presenters, one kid. This is amazing. Celebrate those small wins. Trust me, it'll make you feel a lot better. It'll help you not focus on the things that just didn't go well. Because inevitably, there's going to be something, especially as a planner, that's just not going to go your way. You have to accept it. And again, I always emphasize, simplicity is best. You don't have to have fireworks and balloons and things. Celebrate the small wins, keep it simple, work with the agreed upon and written plan. You're gonna hear me repeat these things because these points are really important to me. All right, setting the package. So this is where we kind of get into your look of your program. So, and we're not talking about what you're actually talking on or what you're presenting on. We're talking about what your community sees, what the school sees, what the kids see when you're promoting this program. So a theme, does it have a cohesive look? Am I going to be able to look at your logo or your title and know exactly what that is if I see it somewhere else for a second or a third or a fourth time? So I'm trying to think. We all currently live in the Midwest, I think. If I say Kroger, does that logo pop in your head? Okay. If I say Marsh, does that logo pop in your head? If I say Fashion Nova, I don't know who all shops at Fashion Nova, but There are some things that are repeated enough that have logos or branding that you can immediately identify. And sometimes you can do it without words. Consistency, making sure your language, your promos, your logos, your hashtag, all follow a consistent pattern. Again, this is part of the packaging, because if you're planning to do this program for the next year or every other year or every other month, you want something familiar that people can look at and like, oh, that's coming back. That's great. I can't wait to go. Sometimes they don't have to read it. They know exactly what it is. That's what you want. You want the exactly what it is. Style guide. This is easy, or this is useful when you are working again with a big group and you are giving out things for every person to do. So you might have one person that just focuses on the style of everything. So they're going to come up with your theme colors. They're going to come up with your fonts. They're going to come up with your formatting rules. They're going to say, you know, we can only do things in fonts 20 or larger because we have a demographic that has, or excuse me, we have a target audience that we are trying to talk to that have visual impairments. There's going to be reasons why you do certain things. So my example is I have a Rubik's Cube theme for this presentation. It's square, bright colors, same font bodies. You're kind of getting the idea that I'm starting with title slides. So you are ready for kind of the next thing that's going to happen. And you're understanding that each color is part of our building pieces. All right, Dana, I got you. Promotion and relationship building. I put these two together because they are extremely important. They work off of each other very well. Promoting your event. So if we go back to the beginning, this whole presentation is about youth programming. However you define youth, that is up to you and how you program. Your youth can be 0 to 1. Your youth can be 17 to 18, technically. Just depending on how you decide what that is basing how you should promote your event. So focus on your target audience and how they receive information. So again, before I get into this, I'm going to take it back a little bit. Again, think about when you were 11. How did you receive your information? Were you all running out and getting the newspaper? If you were, I'm extremely impressed. That was not my story, but you probably had methods of knowing stuff, whether it was talking to your friends, whether it was, you know, getting information from your school or your parents. Well, again, let's elevate that. We're now in 2022, about to be in 23. We have social media. We have electronic newsletters. We have newspaper that's also electronic. We have a lot of things that are accessible. We have bulletins at the library, at the schools, even at your local gas station. How do you determine where you should promote and where you should put your most efforts in? Again, based on your target audience. So I'll go back to, you know, being 11. Friends and siblings, that's at the top of our pyramid. I can't tell you how much bad advice I got back in middle and high school from my friends, but that's who I was listening to. I don't know why. It's because that was my community. So when you're talking about youth programs, 9 times out of 10, word of mouth through the kids themselves will be your best like grabber. Like, oh, you're going to that field trip? I want to go with you so we both can hang out. They could care less about your program. They just want to be with their friends. But friends and siblings, they tend to do what each other do. They admire what the other person's doing, so they're going to follow along. There's always a leader and follower relationship, mostly within kind of that middle and high school age range. Number 2, social media and influencers. I myself, I'm on social media. I'm not on all the social medias though. This is when I kind of go back to my kids and say, hey, can you promote this on your social media? I'll send them an electronic flyer. I'll send them a link and they can put it out with their friends. I don't know if they actually do it, but it doesn't hurt to ask. Youth get and spread news via social media, and those with high follower rates tend to have the best results. There's always a popular kid. Everybody wants to do what the popular kid does. Whatever they post, they're most likely going to get folks to do it. Doesn't mean that you can't utilize your own social media. You can be very intentional, starting a Facebook page, but I will say that Facebook is very low on the list when it comes to youth. So think Snapchat, think TikTok, think those kind of more popular apps, and start to build yourself an audience. Even if you don't have a program, you're just trying to put content out to build yourself an audience. This will be helpful down the line. Number 3, schools, groups, churches. Youth spend most of their day in these spaces. So it's okay to go post or ask to post or give information or make announcement in these spaces. The other piece of these group spaces is they're most likely have adults in these spaces as well. When you're making those announcements, reiterate to those adults, give them information to share out. Number 4, parents, mentors, trusted adults. Again, I have some mentees. I'm like, hey, you should go to this. You should, do this thing. If there are some parents in this group, you may get, things in the mail. You may see something on TV. You may go out and look for things. I know summer camps are a big thing for parents to look for with their kids. These are things that they're going to talk to their kids about. Number 5, local news, credible news. With how TV has changed, I currently do not have regular TV. I have your Hulu, your Netflix, so I don't get news like that. I have an Alexa that I ask for news, but if I ask my Alexa for news, they're probably not going to give me local youth programming. So again, being very intentional how you're going to spread your information. Also understand that some of these places are places of privilege. So like I said, local news and credible news, if you're thinking of the HT, that is a paid subscription. So if you're thinking of doing a low income family or a family that may not have internet, may not have access to transportation, so can't go to these places, you may have to think about, where do they go? They go to school, they go to church, they're going to go to the gas station, they're going to go to these places. So again, just being very intentional how you promote. Same thing when you think about your age demographic. So I brought up, how do you define your youth? So it could be 0 to 2. Well, I'm probably not going to go promote in schools because they're not in school. Probably not going to put anything on social media. I'm going to have to go directly to their parents. So how am I going to find that information out about their parents? That's where we kind of get into that extra spaces in the community. So again, developing your listservs. Anytime an adult comes to your program, get their email, put them on a listserv. They'll let you know if they don't have kids. Trust me, I get those emails. Like, I don't have kids. Can you take me off this list? Absolutely. I'm going to keep you on this listserv though. Sorry, that's my, shh. It's my dog, I'm sorry. Again, think about accessibility and if it will be a wide net or narrow net. So again, going back to your base fundamentals, if I am doing a virtual program, I have capacity of 500. I want as many people as I can get. If I'm going to be doing this program in my office, I'm going to keep my net very narrow. So again, just focusing on target groups, I might just go to a 1 classroom or 2 classrooms to say, I just need 10 students. So thinking about how you're promoting your event and where you're promoting your event. Intentional relationship building. I like these little stair steps because you are doing relationship building throughout the entire time, from beginning to end. Most people always forget this end piece, but that is extremely crucial when you're doing programming. So your before is a lot of the information we already covered. So being clear with your message, using digestible language. So again, you're talking to youth, and sometimes you're talking to adults that don't have a higher reading level than the 12th grade. So we live in a college town. It's very easy to assume that everyone has a college degree, but don't. Write your information out and then give it to a few people to read over. And if there was any word or phrase that's confusing or unclear, rewrite it, redo it. It's okay. It does not, I don't like to use the word dumb down, but it doesn't dumb down your program or what you're trying to convey. You're just making it more equitable for everyone to understand. Give enough time for responses. I am guilty of this. I will send you an email and I expect a response in 15 minutes. That's not realistic. So you want to make sure you give yourself enough time as well. So if you're going to send that email to that potential sponsor, give yourself a few days. Follow up in about a week if you still haven't heard back from them. And also, it's okay to make phone calls. I know that's a weird thing to say for a lot of people. I'm a person that doesn't like phone calls, but make that phone call. Just say, hey, I sent you this email on this day. This is such and such. Get back to me when you can. Provide FAQ resources. This will help you during the rest of your program. A lot of times with youth programs, you have your parents, your teachers, your schools, they have a lot of questions. And sometimes it's just easier to already answer the questions that you think they're going to ask and continue to add when you get new questions. That way you can send them to a space to look. Usually it's an online resource or some type of printed paper that they can easily see their questions being asked. So that way you're not bogged down getting phone calls and emails while you're trying to do the planning. Communicate your needs and expectations to your team. So this is both the leaders of your team and your team members. So if you are not a leader or actually building and you're just like a volunteer, you yourself should also say, hey, I'm here to volunteer. I need to be here from 2 to 4. You know, I can't lift anything over 50 pounds. That is absolutely okay to communicate with the person that's leading this. That way you both have, like I said, agreed upon and written information to go off of, and then you have your expectations as well. Provide multiple formats of information. So if we were in person, I would provide you all with a printed copy, because again, we might have someone who can't look at the screen directly on. It might, the light might be too much. We might need someone who needs a bigger format print. It needs to be available online so they can go back and, you know, cite it if they need to. But just again, thinking about providing multiple formats just in case. And that's just the before piece. Now we're at the during. So now we're actually in our program. Let's say you're in front of 12 kids and you're talking about building bicycles. Use audience etiquette. This means you're not going to, you know, call someone sweetheart. You're not going to point out a kid for, you know, saying something that wasn't correct or within what's happening. You're not going to make a big deal about kids in the back talking. There's ways to move about a program if things are happening. So again, if you have a team, maybe that is something you talk about with your team ahead of time. Like, hey, while the speaker is speaking, would you mind watching the audience to make sure that they're paying attention? And if they're not, would you politely go up to them and say, hey, can you know, focus and give your attention to the speaker? So this way we're not disrupting what's going on. And this way we're not embarrassing anyone. That's very important to remember, that kids sometimes can get embarrassed in spaces and they shut down. And especially when you're wanting to give them good programming and you want them to take something back, definitely just heed on the caution of, hey, can I just talk to you for a second? And we just really want you to focus because we feel like this is really good information for you. Younger does not equal less deserving of respect. Okay. Again, younger does not equal less deserving of respect. I'm going to like speed through this because I only have a little bit of time left. Focus on your audience needs. Keep it simple. Also, there's this rule called the 10-20-30 rule. Basically, that just means your PowerPoint shouldn't be more than 10 slides. You should not go over 20 minutes of it. And I forgot the 30. I'll tell you guys. My brain is now rushing. I always use, what are your questions instead of do you have questions? Typically, always someone has a what is your questions. Always use preferred pronouns. And then also call them what they prefer to be called. My name is Shatoya. I will introduce myself as Toya. I also go by Sweetie from my dad and my partner, but you can't call me that. So again, using audience etiquette and respecting your audience. After, send your thank you notes, do a survey, do your follow-up questions. So again, I just told you, I don't know the 10, 20, 30 part, I can't remember it, but if you all had a question about it, I will do my due diligence to follow up with you to say, oh, this is what this means. Okay. What are your questions? It's okay if you don't have questions. If you have some later, you can definitely email me, but I just want to leave you with this. Program planning is like working a Rubik's Cube. You may not get all the sides to match up at first, but the more you work at it, the closer you are to a solution. Also, there's more than one solution. Remember how I said, think of this as soup? I'm going to use the ingredients that I like, use the ingredients that you like. Sometimes you can solve your Rubik's Cube in 5 minutes. Sometimes it'll take you 5 days. That is what programming is. It is a big puzzle to basically solve. So I definitely want to make sure that I give you all this toolkit. Again, this toolkit is the program planning toolkit. There is a QR code here, and I should be able to drop the link in the chat to everyone. So this will have all the information as well as a copy of this presentation for you, as well as software tools for your use. So again, you can have presentation options. You have these cute little icons that I use for clip arts, connect with your audience. So surveys, making the teamwork. So Airtables, Google Excel sheets when you're organizing your information, virtual meeting space options. Again, making it equitable. Zoom is very popular, so is Google Meets, but there's also Microsoft Teams. How to spread the word, making your flyers, making your branding, Canva, Place It. That way you can make videos if you are that savvy, but these are very easy to use tools and does not take much know-how. And like I said, all of them, well, most of them start off, not all of them start off free. So you have the option to purchase. But as far as a free packaging, they work excellent for programming and I use them consistently. So that is there for everyone's use. That will stay up until this website decides to take it down. But I'm going to go back to this. So I'm going to skip that. Again, during this presentation, I typically give out Rubik's Cubes, but giveaways during a program is always encouraged. It keeps kids wanting to answer questions and it keeps them engaged and they want to get whatever you're giving out. I don't know if you all have been to college, but for some reason, I was a fool for a free t-shirt. I don't know why. It's something about our brains. But it made me want to go to things and do more things. So I was like, I'm going to get this free t-shirt. But that's my presentation. Thank you all. And I will still take questions. We have 1 minute.
Yes, if anyone have any questions or accolades, I sure have accolades. I can see why you're so successful with all the programming you do, and I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, in that website, this presentation is available and it also has my contact information. I love collaborating on projects. I see a few people on here that I collaborate with.
Lots of good feedback in the chat.
It is. Thank you all. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. Again, if this was in person, I would tell you all thank you and follow up with you if you have any questions. But please, if you really do have questions, feel free to email me. That is moss with 3 S's at bloomington.in.gov. And there it is in the chat for your use as well.
We're going to be needing to wrap up here so that we can get ready for our next sessions, but I want to thank Shatoya so much and also all of you for attending and participating. I've certainly learned a lot, and I'll remind you that this video and also the slides and other information will be available on the Btcc website, so you can tell your friends, tell your collaborators, and watch it 3 more times and let it sink in. I think that's what I'll be doing. At this point, our virtual sessions will be continuing. The next one starts at 10 o'clock, and you can find the links for the sessions on the website, which I am posting here in the chat.
You can share the video.
Twice. You can go 2 times. All right. Thanks all. And especially thank you, Shatoya. We appreciate you getting up and going in the morning for this. You said that's a bit of a challenge, but you were great.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks all.
Bye.